Okay then, hopefully you've been away and had a little think about technical skill rehearsal and what we could do. Well, I'm going to throw some stuff out there for you, and I'm sure you've heard these terms before. Whole practice or whole practice, depending on your accent. This simply means practicing the whole skill without breaking it into parts or subroutines. Now, whole skill practice is generally the preferable way to teach a skill, particularly a continuous skill where different things are happening simultaneously. Yeah? Think of running, dribbling with a ball. Okay? It promotes understanding, it creates fluency, and develops the motor programs that we need to be used. This type of practice only breaks down if players are having difficulties mastering the whole action. So if we were looking at a push pass, for example, younger players, they might find it difficult. We may start to break things down a little bit. We may need to say, okay, you need to place the foot, then you need to strike, then you need to follow through. That leads us on to part practice. Here we can focus on the key features of the skill until they're able to perform it in its entirety. But we need to consider some things when we look at part practice. Is a skill too complex for the athlete to practice it at once? Maybe a Cruyff turn with a younger player? Yeah, we could say that's the case. We'll break it down then and we'll go part. If so, which parts can be isolated for focus practice? And which parts need to be kept together to preserve, well, the relative timing pattern of the skill, a relative level of continuity? Whole skill practices should also be encouraged whenever part practice would change the dynamics of the skill. If it's something we need to do really quickly, can we encourage them to do whole skill practice in that way? Okay, we certainly don't want to be jerky, broken up technique. Part practice, however, can be effective and an effective way to teach some types of serial skills. For example then, a player making a move before throwing and catching. Throw in, for example, or a goalkeeper throwing the ball out as part of their distribution. Okay. What about slow motion practice? Here, skills are practiced at a slower rate. The athletes or players can control their movements more effectively and perform them with greater accuracy. However, it's important to remember that you must preserve the relative timing pattern. Please be careful that it doesn't affect the skill that needs a speed accuracy trade-off, for example. So if we think of another sport, then maybe keeping the ball in the court in tennis. However, it's useful. We can use slow motion practice. It can be useful during the rehearsal of, in other sports, new plays, new routines, new strategies. Okay, you might find in a more aesthetic sport such as gymnastics, you might find that slow motion practice is used quite a lot there. Okay, we could certainly use it in football as well. You might think there's a trade-off here. Do we use a part practice for teaching a Cruyff turn, or do we teach the younger players to do it in slow motion? Still a whole practice, but they do it slower. Of course, we need to be careful because we need to get it up to match speed as quickly as we can and effectively as we can. Okay, but it's certainly an option we could use. Okay, I've got another little task for you, trying to break things up a little bit. Okay, this is about practice structure. So I think the true measure of effectiveness is the quality of the athlete's performance in a competitive setting. Okay. Not just coming from me, this is backed up by evidence-based research. We've touched on it from a number of sports psychologists and sports scientists and coaches. Okay, if we can practice it at the club in a session and it's of a high standard, that's great. What matters for us in football is when we cross that white line on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Can we put it into practice then? So, when choosing a practice structure, we need to keep in mind the nature of our sport and the demands of the technical skills that our players or athletes must learn. So please take some time to think about how you would do this for football. What factors would you need to consider? Again, let's get used to using the wiki. Okay, put your ideas up on the board. Use the wiki, share your ideas on there, and we can share with each other and we can all have a look at what we've got. Take 10 to 15 minutes to do this for me, please. Okay.